Welcome to Chaos Divided, your weekly dose of wholesome hammer. If you're a fan of what we do, we hope you'll subscribe and follow us along. And if you'd like to support us directly, you can find us on patreon.com/Chaos Divided 40K. This week, I'm chatting with an old friend of mine, actually. You may know them on Instagram as Cam.ax. But welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. We've somewhat reconnected over the old world, and I've been very excited to. I feel like I keep hinting about the old world in every episode, and now I want to nerd out about it just for as long as possible because I've been having a ton of fun. So I'm glad you're here to share the old world Warhammer Fantasy love with me.
Absolutely. It's my main game at the moment. Everybody listening to this, go and spend thousands of dollars on an old world army. It's the most fun you'll have with this line rule.
I mean, Old World brought back whippy sticks, so I mean that's
yeah,
that's joy in and of itself.
Well, that's normal fun though.
Yeah, but it's part of the Old World. It starts with the whippy stick, and then it gets better.
I suppose. Yeah, fair enough.
And our quote this week, we went to Warhammer Fantasy to get this one up, and it's
brought to you by Third Edition.
A third edition supplement, no less. Back when Games Workshop, loved adding narrative elements to games. No judgment there. No, lots of judgment there. The quote is, "He'd have to be one hell of a shot to get me from," and those are the last words of Duke Reinhand of Carroburg.
Presumably this was just before Carroburg got absorbed into Midland, but I'm not sure.
I like to think it was just a cannonball that replaced his body. Yeah. Just absolutely gone. Maybe sitting atop some noble steed or even some kind of griffin, and then just gone.
Yeah,
the mount completely untouched, just him gone.
With Napoleon Bonaparte.
Exactly. Because when I think of the Empire in Warhammer Fantasy, I think of just they wear their medals into battle. I feel like that tells enough of a story.
Yeah, I mean, magnificent mustaches, lots of extra silk, and all of your medals for maximum intimidation. It's like that scene, if anybody listening has seen The Death of Stalin, when Marshal Zhukov throws off his coat and his just medals all the way down the front. Wonderful scene. Very funny movie. Go see it as soon as you're finished buying $1,000 worth of old world stuff.
I mean, you know what? I got into the old world for less than $1,000. I got into the old world for $500. It is possible.
I believe. Yeah. Okay. It's $500 then, minimum buy-in. Not
that's Canadian. Those are not even real dollars.
Right. That's Monopoly money.
Yeah.
I'm not a paid sponsor of Games Workshop. I am receiving no commission for this.
I like that you leave it open. You're I'm not currently a paid sponsor, but
well,
we'd all take that James money.
I would take money to sell their products, but I'm not very good at it because I'm also quite critical of things.
I mean, if you're not critical of Games Workshop, are you even a fan of Warhammer?
There's got to be one. There's got to be one guy somewhere, who's
it's John Workshop.
It's John Workshop. Yeah, and he's just the lights are not on at home, and everything James puts out, he's just I think this is swell.
Yeah.
Then he tries to drink his coffee through the bottom of his cup and falls down a set of stairs.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever met somebody who's 100% Games Workshop has never done anything wrong and never will do anything wrong. That's a pretty high bar.
Yeah.
I think we're as a community a little too. To play Warhammer, you have to become an analytical person, and I don't think you look at what they do and you're no notes.
No. Well, I mean, I went and got my degree in fine art, and let me tell you, if you want to never enjoy anything ever again, do what I did and get a fine art degree.
I feel like that's the same as a lot of professions. You have to learn how to turn it off sometimes, or else you just go crazy.
No, the critique never ends.
Fair enough. The reason I picked an Empire quote is that is your army du jour in the old world,
Du
which I
jour?
think.
Army,
Well,
the Army of the Millennium, I think you mean?
well, you were talking about Skaven earlier. I didn't know if you were like maybe secretly, before we got started, you were maybe like thinking of maybe crawling up from the sewers with some
Oh, so
rat-based fun.
my Skaven is what I played for Age of Sigmar. And still play for Age
Okay.
of Sigmar. It's based for that. They were really fun in Age of Sigmar 3rd edition. And I have a fondness for rats and other verminous creatures outside of my Warhammer enjoyment. So, Skaven player in other systems. For Squarebase, it's Empire all the way, except no substitutes. Mustaches, gunpowder. That's what we got. That's what we do.
That's
Also, the
fair
Skaven are
enough.
quite bad in overall. I'm sorry, but they're pretty rough.
I mean, don't you just? My understanding in earlier editions, you just played Skaven by just occupying the board with so many bodies nobody could kill you. Is that not still viable?
No, I don't think it is.
Okay.
Large blocks of infantry are kind of in a rough spot at the moment because of, just because of how the rules are structured. There's no step-up mechanic, and there isn't any, like, leadership buffs like the old Horde rules. Well, there are leadership buffs, but they don't work in the same way.
That's fair.
So it's fairly easy to disrupt a rank bonus and then just start a big infantry block into a cycle of doom that they will never pull out of.
Fair. Yeah, that's fair. But no, I wanted to. I know you're an incredible hobbyist, and like I said, a lover of the old world. And if you could maybe, I guess, what drew you to Empire for that, for your square-based joy?
Okay, so what drew me to Empire is my excessive enjoyment of history.
Okay.
I've always enjoyed. Okay. If me and like 80% of other, like every Warhammer player I've ever met has been like, I just really love the narrative of the little guy standing up to the big horrible Griblies. So I am one of those, but I've always been quite interested in history across all periods, but late medieval history is quite interesting. And the Empire basically is that army. They are the Holy Roman Empire of the Italian Wars era, transported into a fantasy war game. And they look so good. Feathers everywhere, mustaches, lots of colorful cloth, big ranks of like normal dudes with standing in lines with their halberds, getting ready to kill the turbo demon from Ultimate Hell. It's great.
I'm going to start calling a Keeper of Secrets a turbo demon from now on. That's just great.
Yeah. Yeah, I get to you. But you have to finish it with From Ultimate Hell. It's got to be both.
From Ultimate Hell?
Yeah.
I mean, the Keeper of Secrets being named what it is has never made any sense. If you were going to tell a secret to something, would you tell it to something that's 150 feet tall? No. That's a good way for everyone to know about it.
Well, okay, but consider, though, if they're 150 feet tall, who are they going to tell?
I mean, even just their whisper would, like, resonate out and be, like, audible for, like, kilometers.
No, that's not how you tell a secret, though. They have to, like, bend down. And if everybody else to you is coming up to, like, the side of your toe, like, you're not going to bother. You're just going to have your head way up 150 feet away, and you're just going to keep them all to yourself.
Fair.
Makes perfect sense.
And no, I did want to talk about, because you're if you haven't had a chance to go look, go check out their Instagram. because your
Oh, you're talking about my
models.
Instagram.
Yeah,
I was like,
absolutely.
oh, what am I supposed to be looking up right now? Okay. Yeah.
No, no, no. This is. I'm hyping you up right now.
I already know
Um,
what's in my Instagram.
because your fantasy models are like a high watermark in my mind, um, for like what fantasy, because you're dealing with a lot of maybe older sculpts that don't have the fidelity of some of the new stuff, and I feel like you've managed to pull out such like incredible detail just through like sheer skill, um,
Thank you.
that
High praise
I
indeed.
think it's truly extraordinary what you've done.
Thank you very much.
Would you maybe mind talking a little bit about how you did that for those listening?
Oh, well, okay. It is hard to answer because I've been painting in both 2D and 3D for so long that it's more of an instinctive process than it is a technical one in some ways. Some techniques that I enjoy using, I like to do a zenithal undercoat, and I usually do it in a pretty vibrant color. So I will begin with like a rich purple or a green, and a lot of it is just, it depends on the final look that I'm going for. It's kind of like an early sketch of the lighting condition that the model is going to be in. So undercoat and a pertinent color of choice, and then I will do a zenithal, usually of either the same color but brighter, or a contrasting color to provide like the base for what I'm going for. So if I did a green undercoat, I might do like an orange zenithal, and then they would stand out from each other quite a lot. And that just gives my eyes something easy to grab onto, and it makes the it makes the sculpt stand out in a way that is easier to paint for me than just trying to paint over a black primer or a white primer or something, because it can be, irritating to depending on the lighting conditions of the room that you're in. It can be a bit of a challenge sometimes to pick out the details that you're after.
Honestly, I think that is such a huge piece of advice right there, because I've known, like, as my eyes have gotten worse, I almost need to like refine the details in a mini, and I don't know if I could put it as succinctly as you just did, but yeah, having a bit of a process to almost like differentiate what is going on, and add a bit of like, I guess, yeah, just reintroducing light, because yeah, I had to stop priming with just like chaos black because I would lose everything in it and I couldn't pick it back out.
Yeah, no, Feminine Black is horrible.
Yeah.
no shade to the painters that can make it work, but it's just, I cannot paint over black anymore. It just doesn't work.
No, but I think that's a huge piece of advice there, because you often, if you are doing something like that, you have to remember where every detail is, which, if you're batch painting and you're going along and they're very similar, that might be easy. But if you're trying to do like a centerpiece model or just something you've never painted before, like that first one is hell. Just trying to even just be like, where are all the components of this, because I'm looking at a black blob. So no, I think that's a huge piece of advice that I love.
Yeah. After that, it sort of depends on the project. I know an airbrush. I use it sometimes to try and lay in base colors. Not really my favorite because I'm not accurate enough, and it's a newer tool to me, so I just don't have practice. So then it's a lot of brushwork. It's a lot of brushwork, and what I like doing is, I like going on Instagram, and I like looking at other artists that I admire. And I don't try to do a one-to-one copy, but I do look at their work while I'm painting and try and reverse engineer what they've done. And being able to do that kind of, one thing, it helps me learn. That's like, yes, I have a degree. Yes, I have 10 years of practice. Never done learning or doing better or trying to do better. And so looking at other artists' work that I admire helps me do that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, then it's a lot of layering painting. I don't do any blending. I don't do a lot of blending. I think that is a technique, like, it's pushed quite a lot, but I think you can do better. Well, okay, better is subjective. I think you can do nice looking work with good color choices.
That's fair. Because yeah, that's a whole. I know if you're on the hunt for a golden demon, I mean that conversation comes up pretty quickly. But it is also a very difficult technique to learn and master, and it is a technique that has very fast diminishing returns if you aren't like an expert at it.
Yeah, I mean, you can spend 20 hours painting an armor panel if you want to, but I would go insane if I tried to do that. I would chew my own wrists off.
Yeah, and that's what I mean about, like, if you're hunting for like a golden D, like if you want that like peak of the peak for like a single model, it might be worth the effort. But if your goal is to put it on the tabletop, yeah, trying to paint 2,000 points to that type of singularity is it's a good way to never finish painting your army.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. You're right. That's all there is to it. Go look at an impressionist painting instead of a pre-Raphaelite or whatever.
Yeah.
There you go. There's the art history part of my degree.
Well, I mean, if I expected you to come on here and have absolutely no art history come out, then I would be sorely disappointed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, talking about the old world, so that's kind of how you and I reconnected. So we knew each other, in ages past.
The battle days.
But yeah, it's really the old world that's brought kind of us back together. So you kind of kept up with Warhammer Fantasy Battles, I guess even past the end. I think.
No, I didn't actually.
Oh, you didn't?
No. So my Warhammer journey, starting from when I was but wee. My parents had a student who was into Warhammer, and this is like I was 8 or 9, so this is like well before even you and I were friends. A student of my parents had the High Elf book. I don't remember which edition. It was the one with a really like airbrush van elf prince cover. Do you know the one I'm talking about, where it's like it's all glittery and he's kind of doing the Napoleon crossing the Alps pose, but it looks like the kind of thing you would find airbrush on a van from the 80s.
I think I do actually, yeah.
Well, this guy had that book and I was just obsessed with it. Like, I was always like asking him to borrow it, and I was reading through it, reading all the detail, like getting fully immersed in this world that I knew nothing about. And at 8 years old was far too poor to like ever get in. So that book was the extent of my Warhammer exposure at the time. A little bit later, started finding White Dwarf magazines at the local library. And I borrowed all of those and I read all of those, did the exact same thing. Really wanted to get into this game. Again, I was 10 or 12, had no money. Kind of went away until my teenage years. Started actually collecting models in my teens. High elves, of course, because of that one book from when I was a kid, and Empire back in the day. Because again, I was an early convert to the idea of, Fritz and 120 of his closest friends do their best to kill Satan with a halberd. That just tickled me. That was great. High elves, because Lord of the Rings was coming out around then, and That was also pretty sweet. That scene that everybody thinks of, the last battle of elves and men, where they're all standing in the line and the waves come up and it looks amazing. So high hopes for that.
Mm.
But none of my friends played fantasy, so stuff I had, those collections had nothing to do with them. What my friends did play was 40k, so I started again with Eldar because high elves, and Imperial Guard because regular dudes. And so those were the armies that I built in collective and played with some as a teenager. Eventually, most of that friend group turned out to be, I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm just going to dunk on some people that I knew and then...
Oh, you dunk away.
Okay, so it turns out the people that I was playing with then were not, like, especially good people. So that kind of fell apart, and I kind of fell out of the hobby. And I got into Infinity.
Okay.
Have you heard of Infinity?
I have seen it played, and I have talked to some people about it, but I've never actually, like, dipped my toe into it.
Okay. Well, for a long time, me and a different friend of mine were the only two Infinity players in all of, like, North America. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Do not fact check me on that. I honestly, that is a joke. Found those models because I wanted to build a Mass Effect themed squad for my Imperial Guard.
Yes.
A project that never came about. There are no pictures on my Instagram. It never happened. I was not a skilled enough sculptor to actually, like, sculpt a Turian head to stick on an Infinity Mini. And that was it. For 10 years, I didn't play Warhammer. I didn't own any Warhammer. I played Infinity instead.
Okay.
Oh, I've lost my train of thought. Oh, what brought me back? Yes, thank you. What brought me back is that 4th edition of Infinity launched, and I read it, and I thought to myself, I can't be arsed to learn this game for a 4th time. And the community of people that I was playing with it was kind of falling away from it. And then COVID happened. And so I am one of those unfortunates who, if I do catch COVID, I will keel over and die the following day, probably. So for a good 3 years, I didn't really leave my house, which wasn't great for Infinity, but what it was great for is Warhammer. I decided, okay, well, I'm done with Infinity. I don't have a hobby to fall back on if I don't have miniatures. I'm going to rebuild the dream collection that I wanted as a kid in Warhammer Fantasy. So that was my project for 3 years, was building the Empire army that I always wanted. Because when I was 12, it's not like I could go on a Forge World cyber credit card and have the, like, fancy Forge World stuff that I wanted.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Of course, it's all out of print now, or it was at the time.
Yeah.
So I spent 3 years scouring eBay and Facebook Marketplace for deals and rare pieces and, interesting forgotten sculpts. And that's when the number that I come up with when I think of getting into Old World is north of $2,000. Because some of those models were a lot.
Yeah, I know when it was out of... Well, even... Yeah, I mean, I was able to do it because I used Age of Sigmar. And also picked, like, the most elite army in the Old World.
Yes.
So, yeah.
But
not because it was the most elite, just my Chaos Heart could go no other direction. But yeah, that's why I was able to. I know, like, if you want to build Tomb Kings or Empire, like, it is frighteningly expensive very quickly.
Some of it wasn't so bad because, of course, the Cities of Sigmar range refresh hadn't come out yet, so it was still, a lot of the old stuff was still kicking around. But
okay,
Empire Knights weren't around. None of the Forge World stuff was available. Most of the 8th edition stuff was around. I love Denigryphs, so I was able to get quite a few of those for pretty cheap. But Elspeth von Draken on Carmine Dragon was long out of print and was a pretty rare purchase, even when it was in print, because it was expensive then. And it took me about 3 years of careful trawling and some very disappointing missed bids to finally get one, but I did, and it was worth it. And then Overworld came out, and I was like, excellent, I have a game that I can play with all of these miniatures that I own now. I had entertained ideas of playing Kings of War, but that never materialized. One of my friends has like a homebrew edition called Warhammer Orchard, which is kind of like a best of version of 6th edition and 8th edition. That was pretty fun. Played a game of that. Erased 2 Tree Lords with Pit of Shades for all my 8th edition enjoyers. You were about to ask me a question again. I'm sorry. I'm starting to ramble.
Oh no, rambling is good. This is we are known for our tangents at Ye Old Chaos Divided. Which, you know, I guess if we're going to fantasy, we can be Ye Old Chaos Divided this week. Oh, now I want to get like an in sign that has the logo on it. Anyways, now I'm going on a tangent. I was curious, how far into the collection were you before like the Old World was announced?
Oh, it was finished.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I had everything finished, fully painted, fully based. It was done. It remains done, except Outriders are really good in the Old World, and I didn't have any of those on horses. I had customized some of my own with some assumptions on base size that turned out to be wrong, but they're based in such a way that I can't actually change it. So those guys don't work, but I need to want to field Outriders. So I've got some more of those coming in the mail, but other than that, the collection was done.
I mean, that's kind of awesome. You were ready to go, because I know when I started seeing the wheels started turning when I saw kind of some of the announcements coming, because I had, you know, I was not as deep into Warhammer Fantasy before its cancellation, but I'd kind of around the same, probably around the same time you were getting out of the hobby, I was also my like last ditch effort to stay in the hobby was some Wood Elves, and then, you know, it just sort of like never materialized into an army. So when the announcement of the Old World came out, I was like, you know what, I'm not missing it this time, because I always liked the concept of the Old World. I actually probably I like the concept of Warhammer Fantasy Battles more than 40k, like inherently.
Oh, me too. Yeah, 100%. And saying Age of Sigmar. Sorry, say it Sigmar rights, but Old World was more fun.
There's just something about that, like, I don't know, like even when you used to go, like, you know, I remember being like a teenager going to like the Games Workshop store, and like, yeah, I was there for 40k, but then you'd like look over at like the blocks of, you know, models all arranged in a row, and you're just kind of like, that seems cool. There's just something like very, like, I don't know, like inherently war gamey about fantasy, and like just moving blocks of units around feels satisfying.
Well, that's what the part of the big draw for me is. Playing a game of Old World or fantasy, you feel like you are generally, no, how do you make a verb out of general? It feels like you're commanding an army on a field.
Yeah.
40k, particularly with 10th edition, and the new edition of Age of Sigmar, you don't feel like you're commanding an army. You feel like you're moving game pieces. To me.
I think that's
I feel that way. I'm not speaking for the multitudes. I've only played one game of the new Age of Sigmar, and I tried to separate my system complaints from my army complaints because I got my ass kicked. But at no point during the process did I feel like I was commanding hordes of rats. It felt like I was chasing circles on the table and picking rats up as health shot them.
Yeah, that's no, that's fair. 'Cause I mean, they're different scales of combat, effectively. Like, 2,000 points of an old world game represents like more than a skirmish, which 40k and Age of Sigmar are built around like skirmishing forces. Like, it's not. I know 40k has gotten blurred with like knights and things, and it's the scale of 40k is jank at this point. But it's supposed to be a skirmish game, and Warhammer Fantasy Battles was always more of a like army tactics. Like, it was a higher degree of like strategy. Like, it was one step removed. If 40k and Age of Sigmar is the view from 100 feet, Fantasy Battles was the view from like 1,000 feet. Like, you were supposed to be a little bit more removed than just
sure.
like in the thick of combat.
You are the Duke of Wellington standing on his hill watching the Imperial Guard march into a hole. Whereas 40k, you're sort of behind the rifle almost. Not quite, not that low, but
yeah, but you're not that far back. Like, and that's where like having Primarchs in 40k makes it. As much as I love seeing Primarchs, just like from like a lore perspective, it does make like the game kind of wonky.
Yeah, well, they wanted to do the big centerpiece models, like they were proving popular in Sigmar. That's my conspiracy theory. There is they were producing these gigantic and gorgeous centerpieces for Age of Sigmar, and 40k didn't really have that unless you were playing a knight.
Yeah.
So bring the Primarchs in, great way to sell a centerpiece.
Well, and even the Knights were still relatively new, and I mean, like, you didn't used to bring Bane Blades to 2,000 point games because it was just stupid.
I don't think you were allowed to. They were too expensive and they didn't fit into the force chart, right? At least in the edition that I played.
In old enough editions, yeah, you couldn't. I'm not familiar enough with 6th and 7th to know if you couldn't, but I know like 5th and back, you just like couldn't. It was an Apocalypse scale model. Yeah.
Now you can bring 3. I don't actually know if that's true.
Yeah. I technically can.
Excellent.
Because I think they're under 600 points, so you can probably fit 3 of them in your. Yeah, it's just
incredible.
Yeah. Anyway, that's a different complaint.
Yes. Yeah, I played one entire game of 10th edition 4K.
You know what though? I'm just as bad though. Like, I will say like, hey, the scale is wonky, but then I'm like, I want Fulgrim with like every fiber of my nerdy heart of just like, I want him on the table and I will bring him every game because he's Fulgrim. So I am both the problem and the solution.
Are you talking about the new Fulgrim? The Fulgrim transfigured or whatever?
I mean, that's gorgeous. But that's for Horus Heresy, actually.
Oh, right.
They haven't shown off the 40k Fulgrim yet.
I see. Well, I don't.
But I feel like he's coming.
I mean, yeah, they've done Angron and Mortarion. I'm not here to talk about 40k. I play Admech.
No.
An army that has seen some ups and downs.
Yeah. No, I guess my point is that I am both. I am part of the problem. Because I want this big centerpiece model.
Well, I mean, it's a great way not to have to pay 500 more coins in infantry. So, yeah.
Exactly. Which honestly, like, coming back to the old world is partly why I got Chaos Dragon, because it's just one big thing in this, and it's so big. It's obnoxiously big, and it's on such a tiny base, and it's hilarious to me. But,
well, yeah, Archaon is a chunky boy.
He is a chunky boy. But no, I do like the type of game Warhammer Fantasy, and I know there is other game systems that are out there that emulate kind of that, rank and flank style gameplay, but there is something. I guess Warhammer has a ubiquity that. I've never met so many people that play like Conquest Age of Kings compared to, the old world came out and then very suddenly there was a old world community.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say Kings of War probably had the closest run at sort of taking over that market share, but as soon as Games Workshop said, no, we're back in the game, everybody just sort of flocked to it. And I know there's lots of community editions and stuff. I have no experience with them. They're not really for me. Um,
I think one of the struggles with any community edition of anything, people get to kind of pick and choose what they think is the best version of those.
yes.
There's a lack of arbitrariness to it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. It's a bunch of people who love their armies trying to write the best army for them. Or maybe it's not that. That's just how I imagine it. And I prefer the vicissitudes of some faceless company saying, no, it works like this.
Well, yeah, there's a lack of self-interest when, because if one of the things we can level at Old Games Workshop these days, there's a lot of design by committee going on there.
100%.
But that does create
design by
an even
sales
playing
department.
field. Yeah. That does then kind of create, like I said, that degree of arbitrariness that like one of the things, coming to the old world, I very quickly realized it's Monster Mash is what this first edition of it is, compared to older editions, which I think were much more infantry and cavalry friendly.
Yeah, there's always been like one element of the force chart that has shone in every edition. I think 5th edition, I think, is known to be hero hammer, because your foot and horse heroes were the thing that you brought. I mean, 8th edition was an infantry centric edition because the horde rules meant they stuck around.
Yeah.
This edition, Monster Mash is definitely a problem. Well, it's that monsters are having their time in the sun thanks to layered saves and some targeted nerfs to their best counters. Cannons.
I'm sure you have no feelings about that as an Empire player.
Yeah, a D3+1 instead of D6 damage on the Great Cannon makes me real sad some days.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, some days all 3 of them misfire, and some days you just pick up the Dragon Prince, or the High Elf Lord on Star Dragon or whatever, and that feels good. Misfires feel bad. When they go, okay, here's my 5-up armor save, here's my 5-up regen save, and here's my 5-up ward save, and then your cannons all hit the target but did nothing, that feels sad.
That's fair. That's very
to me as an Empire player. I'm sure if I was playing High Elves, that would feel amazing, because sometimes they fail all of those saves, and you spend 500 points on target practice for the opposing cannons.
Yeah, and I mean that is kind of the artillery game is the misfire. I think one of the struggles is that, like, compared to Magic in the old world, the degree of danger, I guess self-danger, is very wonky. Because there's almost like the miscast table, if you do get a miscast, is pretty friendly overall. Like there's just like Magic feels so reliable, and then artillery just doesn't have the same oomph to it.
Not always.
I know it can it can overperform.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm playing in a league right now, and my last match was against a Bretonian player, and I felt so bad for him, because he deployed his army. I had my army deployed. And I unfortunately won the roll to go first, and 1 round of artillery shooting, and half of his army was just off the table.
Yeah, that hurts.
Yeah. In other games, it's been turn 1, and the enemy army is inches away from my nose, and I've killed a bunch of them coming in, and some wrapped up wizard from 1,000 years ago has gone, arise, and my entire army has been undone. Old world is just kind of like that.
It does seem very I feel like I'm still learning the nuances of it and the intricacies of it, and it is very once you get the momentum in a game, it is very hard to be stopped.
Yes, yeah, it can be hard to turn around a losing situation. Not impossible. Much more than the other systems, I think. It's fortune on the dice really has more influence than it does in other games.
Yeah, I mean when you think of like, I feel like in 40k a 3-up save, and even in Age of Sigmar like a 4-up save is quite common. Where even like a 5-up save in the old world is fairly uncommon. And armor piercing of 1 or 2 goes a very long way in those situations.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's also stuff like maybe you're getting beat to Kingdom Come, but you roll really well on your break check, and the unit
Yeah.
that they were expecting to push off the board, musters some gumption and stands its ground against the Turbo Demon from Ultra Hell. and maybe enough halberdiers in the front rank survive that they do actually kill the Gribbly, and it's a wonderful game for providing moments like that, where it's
true.
It's you weren't expecting it. Maybe you're on the back foot, but suddenly Fritz and his buddies pull through for you, and that feels so good.
Which greater demon are you imagining when you say Turbo Demon from Ultra Hell?
Oh, toss up between the Keeper of Secrets and Bloodthirsters.
Okay, that's fair.
Those are the two that I've had the most experience facing in other games. The only time I've seen demons in Old World was my second ever match. It was supposed to be a beginner's tournament, 1,250 points. And I go, well, do I really need a wizard? I can rely on the Fated Dispel, maybe. First game into Tzeentch Demons. It just went, okay, this flies over your unit of Halberdiers, this flies over your unit of Halberdiers, this flies over your unit of Halberdiers. This guy casts, I think it's Demonic Familiars. This guy casts the same spell. This third guy casts Fireball up-leveled. And suddenly everything is dead. And I was like, oh, okay. Bring a wizard every time. Bring a level 4 wizard, make him better with dispelling things.
I think I know who you're talking about. Did they bring a Lord of Change in this list?
I think so, yeah.
To a 1,250 point game that's a beginner, event.
Yeah.
Oh.
It was rough. It was rough, buddy.
That is... Yeah. That is unfair.
Yeah, so obviously lost that game. Then I fought some dwarves to a draw, and I think you and I played. And was that that day?
No, you and I haven't played yet. Actually, I'm looking forward to when we get to play at some point, because I feel like I feel like you and I actually have a fairly decent matchup in that I don't bring. We're very opposite. I'm very I play very melee. You play very ranged guns, mustachioed. I feel like it'd be very interesting to see how it turns out.
I'm certain that it would be.
I do have a tendency to now bring the Ultra Dragon though. So
that's fine.
Because everyone brings Ultra Dragons against me, so I'm just if we're gonna play a dragon off, then I'm gonna bring the best dragon.
Okay, well, the Empire General on Griffin, bless his little heart, is not an Ultra Dragon.
Yeah, no, it's after playing into High Elves with 2 dragons, I was just I can't compete. I was I have dudes with swords and shields, and you're sending in 2 dragons at them, and then they just go kersplat.
Yeah. I faced that same list.
Yeah.
I killed the mage. Turn 1, triple cannons, just greased the Archmage on the dragon, but I couldn't get the prince. It made me sad.
Yeah, no. My whole thing is, I'm a melee army, and I don't actually think I declared a charge that game because they were just on my face. I just had dragons in my business from turn one, and it never stopped until I was dead. And I was just like, never again. I don't want to deal with this. I was like, I got knights, I got cool knights, I got good knights, and they were not enough. It was a sad moment for me.
Yeah, yeah, it can be rough. It's definitely it's a problem to be solved, and one of my critiques of the game is that solving that problem tends to skew lists a certain way, but
Yeah,
that's
no, I agree.
but
I've very much found that I think as every time I play a game, it's almost like the meta is narrowing into like how do you bring that's why I called it Monster Mash early on, because it's like what is your faction's monster, and then what do you build around it to deal with whatever else they bring.
my faction's monster is a steam tank,
Yes, I love steam tanks.
and I don't bring it because it is not a counter to other factions' monsters.
No, it is not.
I love it. It's tough 7, it's 10 wounds. You can run it into stuff and it won't die. But if you run it into something that will kill it, it
Yeah,
doesn't have the output to help itself.
yeah, no, that is not unfortunately a monster.
No,
Um,
just a heavy chariot.
yeah, it's a monster in many other ways, but it doesn't actually defeat monsters.
No.
Um,
And
which
there's
is
not much in the Empire roster that does. It's kind of, you're bringing 3 cannons, great cannons, and you're bringing 2 engineers for the rerolls. And that's pretty much it. There's some stuff you can do with like speaking of playing into the high elf double dragon list, I had a tech that I tried out where there's a priest that can give everybody multiple wounds too, and there's a witch hunter that gives out magical attacks. And I stuck both of those characters in a unit of 16 handguns. It needs some more testing. It's possible that I should have used crossbows instead of handguns. It did do about 4 damage to the prince. And then the prince ate them all, and that was the end of that. Well, the prince probably didn't, but his dragon definitely did.
Would the crossbows give you more range? Is that?
Yeah, the crossbows give you a 30-inch reach with no AP instead of 24-inch. But I like black powder weapons because that's cool, and
No, that's fair.
the models that I have for them are better.
Yeah, no, I mean, you don't play a list filled with cannons to bring crossbow dudes.
No, it's just not right.
Yeah, it just doesn't feel right. Might as well be playing like Bretonnian or something.
Yeah.
Ugh, gross.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't have a bias against Bretonnians, but well, actually, you know what? My original faction was Wood Elf, so I guess I can hate Bretonnians. Just like get out of my forest.
Yes, of course. And my grandparents were English, so it's genetic for me.
Yeah, I did want to talk maybe a little bit about, you talked about building up the collection and then getting to play. For those listening, what's kind of what would be some advice if they wanted to get into the old world?
Do it. Do it now.
Just do it.
Do it. Colors. No.
No, because I think it is. I think there's a degree where the old world is intimidating. I've heard people talk about like combat resolution seems complicated, or just the fact like it plays so differently. Like Age of Sigmar and 40k now, and even to another extent like Horus Heresy are all kind of similar rule concepts, and then the old world's just kind of sitting over on like far off in the corner being like, hey, I'm straight out of 1983. So I think there is a degree of intimidation for people.
Okay. My serious advice for Pat. Oh, let's see. First, it's probably don't play Skaven. They're quite hard to do well with, and you probably won't have that much fun.
I mean, unless you really love, you know what? I've always said, love of the models and love of like the faction will carry you through. Like, you might not win a ton of games, but if you're having like, I feel like Skaven are similar to like orcs in that like it's like a larpable
Oh, absolutely.
faction.
10 top tier themes, and like being able to run around and yell die man thing at your enemies never gets old. Yeah, I have a stockpile of Skaven quotes.
That's no, but that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like you're
No, they are wonderful for that.
It's like if you're a Skaven player, like you know you're a Skaven player.
Yes,
like
absolutely.
It's like
100%.
you know, like it's like in your heart. It's like it's the same with orcs. Orcs are the same. It's like, you know, the people that play orcs are just like, you don't even need to ask. You're like, you play orcs, don't you?
Yeah, 100%.
And they're like, what you mean?
Yeah. And there is certainly a joy to just covering the table in worthless furry bodies. And just flinging them away like you don't care. That is very true to, like, the game experience is true to the lore. If that's something that's important to you, it's fair. No, okay. Serious advice time. Do it. Pick based on models you like. Even if they're from Age of Sigmar, which Age of Sigmar, nice models. Yes. Very nice models. Buy those and find something, like find an army that you kind of think fits the look and the theme, and that you think might look kind of fun to play or fun to list build. But Cam loves playing against painted armies, so buy models that you like and make them work for old world. If you love the old stuff, that's wonderful. They're re-releasing a bunch of it. Has some stuff that hasn't been seen in ages. The release schedule is quite slow. But yeah, buy what you want. Put it on whatever base you want. I mean, not whatever base you want. Put it on whatever base is legal.
Yeah.
And give it a try. If you hate it, maybe, or if you're not sure, and you are coming to it from another game, base it for Age of Sigmar and use movement trace to port the army over to Old World. Basically, that's how I play Skaven. None of my empires on the right base size either, because when I was building it, there were 20 mil bases. Dang it. But yeah, give it a try. Give it a try with somebody cool, because you don't really want to have your first game experience against somebody who's going to make it rough. That's really all I got. I'm such a nerd for the sort of simulate an actual medieval battle thing that I don't even like. If that's the kind of thing that appeals to you, you'll love Old World. If you love fighting over circles on a map and hate paying attention to unit phasing, you probably won't like it very much.
Well, I think Total War Warhammer has probably introduced more people to the concept of the old world than Warhammer Fantasy Battles ever had.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, only this time you don't get to blame the AI for pathing issues.
Yeah, you are the pathing issue. The 100% of the time.
The pathing issue is you.
Yeah. Which I think is part of the challenge. I mean, movement is so important in the old world. I find playing the old world has made me better at movement in other Warhammer games, because it is just so critical, and you have to think so many turns ahead, and that's what I mean about it being more strategic, because you have to think not just in the moment, but you have to think almost the entire game forward as to what you're doing and how you're going to do it, because I mean, if you have 7 units and you put them all in the wrong direction and they can't do anything, you're losing potentially 2 turns getting them turned around to do anything again.
Oh, easily. It is quite hard to recover from a positioning error.
Yeah,
it's not, and it's not so razor thin that if you're a little bit off, you're gonna lose the game. It's not.
No,
it's not War Machine.
It's more decisions. Yeah,
Shout
it's
out
not.
to
It's
the
not like, oh,
yeah. Shout out to the one remaining War Machine player in the world. If there are 100 people that hate War Machine, I am one of them. If there is one person that hates War Machine, it's me.
That's.
I hope I'm not losing you, your audience. I'm so sorry, everybody. Enjoy the game that you enjoy. Don't listen to me. I'm just being chaotic.
I mean, I don't know if I've ever met anyone who's played a lot of War Machine, let alone hates it. So
yeah, fair enough.
I know it had its moment of popularity a while ago, but I thought it had kind of like died out.
I think it still exists, and I'm sure, like in most games, it has its hardcore fans. What were we talking about? We were talking about Old World. War Machine doesn't need
like
to be
why
discussed.
why you would play the Old World. And maybe actually one of the beginner's tips I kind of wanted to bring up is actually talking to your local game stores and expressing interest. I was in one of the ones in Halifax recently and just talking to them about how big the Old World community was, and I don't think they'd realized. So expressing that interest and kind of getting your local game stores on board will go a long way. And also, you know, even if you're not necessarily in a position where you want to put down the money to play, you know, to build up your own army, those store armies can go a long way. And I mean, even if it's the decision that they buy some of the movement trays that they can adapt their AOS models into, so you can have a go at it and play a small game with a friend, or just kind of build up that community kind of step by step. Because I think, you know, we're fairly fortunate in that locally there was just kind of a group of people that rose out of the like ashes of Warhammer Fantasy Battles to walk into the Old World. But I know in a lot of
yes,
regions there just isn't,
for better and for worse. But
yeah, you know, we talked about the Lord of Change in a that's a move.
God.
And I'm not going to say what kind, because I'm sure you can imagine what move I think it is.
God, I hope he never listens to this podcast. If you're listening,
I hope he does, and I hope he knows it's him. Yeah. And we're not going to name him, so he'll never truly know. Yeah. But I want him to know that I'm disappointed in him.
If you're listening, you know who you are. It was an educational experience. Don't do it again.
Right. Nothing says, hey, do you never want to play this game again, than getting like smeared across the table in just like a blood, like just like blood and guts. Like it's just like, hey, did you even get to roll dice other than saves? No. I had fun, I guess. Like, no, that's not good. That's not good etiquette.
No, it wasn't. And I don't mind getting smeared across the table. That's fine. It's just, I came to the game with like a certain expectation of like how things were going to go, and he was playing the game in a way I didn't even know could be done. And it was, like I said, educational. It was a lot like playing, like I guys said this at the time. I said it was like playing an Old World army against someone who's playing Age of Sigmar.
Yeah.
Brutal experience. Here's another piece of advice. If you're interested in trying it and you're shy about dropping a few $100 on a bunch of models, it's a square base game based on units. Cut out cardboard squares, rectangles in the right size. Write down what's on them and like try it. Like find yourself the rules online somewhere. It's not that hard to, I'm sure, to do some piracy.
One of the great tools you can use is Warhammer, the Old World Army Builder, which may or may not have all of the rules in it.
Yeah. And give it a try that way. Like bit of Sharpie, some scissors. You'll be getting some of the experience. There's nothing quite like having the full array on a table, but it'll give you a good impression of if it's the kind of game you would enjoy.
No, that's what one of the reasons why I reached out to you. Like when your army is arrayed on the table, like it's gorgeous.
Thank you.
It is colorful. Like it is a delight to see. Because unlike 40K and even Age of Sigmar, the terrain on an Old World board is significantly less. So your models are the ones doing most of the like visual storytelling.
Yes, there's nowhere to hide.
And a very classic, fantasy battleground is just like grass field. So I mean, your models have to do a lot of the like visual lifting to bring any type of immersion, and I 100% think your models carry you away, and you almost like feel. I watched one of your games where is it a hippogriff? The Griffin, the General Griffin came smashing into some dwarves.
Yes,
and like I could feel it. I could like feel the ground shaking as this thing just like came in.
Yes, it's a demigriff, a flightless griffin. I love them. I own 12, 18, 19 of them for some reason.
No, the big one, the big guy.
Yes, I do. So that was one of my out of print Forge World finds. That is still a demigriff. It's just bigger and fancier.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I assumed it was a different thing because it was an order of magnitude larger than the other ones.
No, that's just it's an old Forge World piece. And for the longest time, that was the only demigriff that had a sculpture. And then the demigriff knights came out, and they were quite a bit smaller.
Gotcha.
That is Theodore Brackner on Reaver, for those of you listening along and want to Google what the hell I'm talking about, or find it on my Instagram.
No, and it's a terrifyingly impressively painted model in the first place. And I mean, your whole army is gorgeous and just colorful. And I also appreciate that because it can also be very, when you're batch painting, it can be, which the old world almost encourages, because when you're like, hey, and you have 45 of these things to paint, there can be a temptation to not make them feel special, and I think you've done a very good job of making them all feel special.
Well, that's just because you haven't looked at the inventory too close, but thank you.
I have yet to meet an amazing hobbyist who isn't like, I'm not that good, and you're like, well, what you do is gorgeous to me. So
thank you very much. Yeah, well, should be self-deprecating. We are here to feed my ego, after all.
Right?
No, sorry.
No, and I think that is part of the like the appeal of the old world. Like in my mind, is there is a part of it that is like it is a different challenge. It is a different problem to solve than 40K can ever give you, because movement, like it is a clash of armies. You know, if you've ever felt the weight of like 10 Terminators charging through a building and just like clobbering something, that is like the closest 40K can get to the feeling of like, a cavalry charge from the flank coming in. Like it really is something to see, like when you line everything up and you get, the movement shenanigans you wanted to, and you kind of, your plan comes together the way you want. Like, yeah, that's a feeling only the old world has been able to give me so far.
Absolutely. And another big part of it, on a sort of similar subject, or similar vein line of thought, is it's the only game where the point of deployment is to face and to destroy your enemy's army. Your opponent's army. They're not your enemy. You are there to play a collaborative game most of the time. Your opponents. And so you are playing against them with very few other considerations, where in 40K and Age of Sigmar, you're both there trying to interact with the table. And sometimes killing off your enemy's army is part of that. Sometimes that's not what you're doing. And I think that is missing something for me that old world has.
It's a different challenge. It's a different
it's a different.
I mean, I will say that I would like the old world to maybe sometimes have an objective. I don't mean just sitting on circles. That doesn't make sense with the old world, but
no,
a more definitive reason to interact.
Well, sure. Because, I mean, I think it would be interesting if you could have something like, if you control this hill or something, maybe there's like a disused bombard or something that your army can use.
Yeah.
Like a reason to want to hold a position beyond just, oh, this will score me points.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be like, this is worth X points because of what, like, but yeah, like there's a reason to interact and there's a reason to engage, and there's, I like the term playing the table. Actually, I'm going to steal that from you
Yeah,
if you're okay with
my
it.
gift to you.
Because yeah, I do think there's some times where, I've played enough games at this point where you're kind of saying, I'm a melee army that is fairly slow. You have no reason to actually interact with me. You can just dance around me the whole game. And it would be nice if we were going at a common objective, just sometimes. But I guess that's maybe because of the faction I play. I see more of a reason for that, but
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think there are some things you could do maybe to the scoring system of Old World. For those of you who don't know, it's basically kill point scoring. But
Yeah.
if you haven't completely destroyed a unit, you only get 25% of the value. So one of the tactics at the moment, and this actually cost me the game against that double high elf dragon, the double dragon high elf list that I was talking about, is you had 2 big units of elite heavy cavalry, and I killed them all down to 1 guy from each unit. And because I couldn't get the wounds off on the last 2 guys from 2 separate units, it was a 600-point swing, and instead of I think it was 1,400 to 900 loss for me, would have been a 200-point win for me. So, and he played correctly. He ran those guys the hell away to save points and take up the win, and that's perfectly valid. But I see what you mean about using
no
game
benefit
rules
in there
to
that
encourage the conflict. Yes.
Yeah, I guess that's what I mean of like encouraging interaction. Because yeah, in that scenario, he's incentivized to run them away, and and I mean, you play an army where there is a degree of range that you have. You might be able to pick them off, at long range. But I mean, if you don't have giant cannons sitting in the back, you're just sort of like, okay, well, I can't do anything about this. Which then feels weird that it's like, hey, I'm just gonna like run my army away from you because I've now killed enough, and now it's just like I guess technically you're retreating. I don't know. It's a weird.
Sure.
It creates a weird dynamic in my mind.
Yeah, I could never play like that because when I'm winning, the red mist descends. And, and I go, all right, it's time to win harder. And occasionally it'll bite me in the behind or whatever, but I get
Are you sure
there's
there's not a little chaos in your heart? A little bit of corn whispering?
There's lots of chaos in my heart, but it's all chittering rats.
No, we don't accept that.
You're wrong. I'm sorry. Great Horned Rat, great is the best chaos god.
Listen, when I found out that Slanesh is like imprisoned in Age of Sigmar, it made me so sad.
Yeah.
Age of Sigmar lore just makes me sad.
No, somebody hit him with a horny stick and sent him to horny jail.
Yeah, it's
Bonk.
It's just Age of Sigmar lore is no bueno.
Yeah.
No bueno in my books. Makes me sad.
I don't really know the Age of Sigmar lore that well. I kind of do. It's there. The gods are all fighting, and the humans are basically the pawns, and
yes,
they're all fighting over soul currency or whatever. Don't at me, Sigmar fans. I play the game. I can't be bothered to learn more. I'm sorry. But Slanesh deserves to be in jail, and
Great
Horned Rat, is the only Chaos God who gets shit done. All other Chaos Gods, losers.
Because the Chaos Gods know what's at stake.
No.
It's the whole point of it.
No.
It's gotta go on forever.
No, we're gonna flip the table. All will be rats.
No, that's no fun. You must suffer forever.
Nope, all rats. Well, only rats forever. Actually, I'm quite irritated with Games Workshop because, like, for as long as Age of Sigmar has been around, Azir has been like Age of Sigmar heaven, and it's like, oh, it's Sigmar's perfect realm, kind of like Duvok. Wipe your hands, or wash your face, wipe your whatever. Azir is a perfect place.
Yeah.
And then when they were like, okay, we're redoing this game and they're getting a big narrative moment, they're gonna like crash their extra dimensional city into one of the planes and destroy half of whatever it is and take it over. I was like, it's got to be Azir. They have to crash Skaven Blight into heaven and like fight Sigmar on his home ground. Finally break down the gates. No, they just sent them to Akshi, where everything is happening all the time because fire is like the element that Games Workshop thinks is the most interesting. Boring, lame. Rats should have invaded heaven. That would have been amazing.
I mean, isn't it the Skaven's fault that like Warhammer Fantasy, like Old World, dies in the first place?
No, it's Manfred's fault.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I don't know. Somebody tried to explain to me like the beginning lore of Age of Sigmar once, and I was just sort of like, I don't understand why we're doing this.
Oh, so in the end times, Chaos was like doing their time to fight the Apocalypse War, and Order and Death kind of got their shit together and like worked together to try and hold them off, and they were kind of winning, and they were going to do some magic ritual to turn like all of the main characters into super main characters by juicing them with juicing them each with one of the winds of magic, I think.
Okay.
And then Manfred von Karstein went, well, I'm actually just hate the Empire, so I'm going to stab you guys in the back, literally. And so the ritual failed, and everything got fucked up, and Chaos won, and the planet exploded, and the gods went off into their own pocket dimensions. I will note that the Great Horned Rat is the only god that actually brought some of his followers with him. He ate a bunch of Skaven, and then when he found his little pocket dimension for Skaven Blight to exist in, he vomited them all back up again, and that's why there's Skaven in Sigmar.
Okay.
He's the only one who cared enough to bring them, though. Everybody else was just like, well, we'll get to it eventually.
I mean, that also checks out. Yeah. I thought Sigmar like at least like gave some degree of concern for people, but I guess not.
No, Sigmar just clung to the rock that used to be the planet for a long time, like a punk.
Of course he did. This is blasphemy to your Empire mouth, you know.
I know.
The Inquisition will be seeing you shortly.
Wrong game.
There's an Inquisition in the Empire.
There are witch hunters. They are not really an Inquisition. They're semi-legal cops, but they don't really have the go anywhere, do anything like authority of the Inquisition does in 40K.
I'm gonna be 100% honest with you. 90% of my knowledge of the Empire in the Old World is based off of badly remembered lore from Warhammer Age of Reckoning.
Oh, now there's a name I haven't heard in a long time.
Right. So yeah, that's my understanding of the Empire, is playing through those regions in Age of Reckoning.
No. So they kind of exist, but I mean they do exist, but they mostly exist to track down unsanctioned spellcasters.
Oh, okay.
Getting
a little inquisitorial,
but they're a little inquisitorial, but they don't really have the authority to just roll up on some town and be like, all right, this whole town has to do exactly what I say, or I'm going to burn it all down. Like they might in 40K, they're kind of just, they've got their Puritan buckle hats and their pistols, and they will show up to the town and be like, okay, show me the way to like the woodsy grandma with the folk cures. I have to check to make sure she's not actually summoning demons on Gehammus Nacht or whatever.
You know, in Warhammer land, that's a far more legitimate concern, you know?
Well, I mean,
demons are pretty readily summonable.
It is like a legitimate, yeah.
Like concern, yeah. Like it's you're like, yeah, you know what? That if you're like accidentally putting a little too much like winds of magic into the soup,
yeah,
like,
you might,
you know, and then like bloodletters show up. Like that's a bad time for
Yeah,
everyone.
you might become the soup.
Yeah. So like that's a fair concern. Um anyways, I want to make sure we don't go too long. Any last thoughts, anything else you want to share?
Goodness. Come play Old World. It's really good. Um, Hopefully my somewhat incoherent ramblings have given you at least an impression of what the game is like and why you should play it.
I think the big like the some of the rules that I see people being like intimidated by are ones that you can learn, and I think it's not as scary as you think it is. And if the idea of just like smashing armies together, if you're a fan of picking up models and making your opponent pick up models, and just like you said, the red mist covering your eyes, the old world definitely like fills that void a lot more than like 40k does. Like there's a viscerality to the old world. Like you are crashing into each other. Like charges feel substantial. Like when you're moving those like blocks of models and you're like, hey, my like 20 dudes just crash into you. Um, I don't know. Like if you like moving models around, there's like there's like a brain go burr satisfaction to moving around blocks of models in a way that like individually moving models just doesn't
Yeah,
doesn't
there
scratch.
absolutely is. And the combat resolution stuff, you're right. It does read complicated, but
It
it
does.
plays really well. And
And even and
it allows. Sorry, it allows for those moments where, like, yeah, maybe your block of spearmen just had their entire front rank evaporated by the turbo demon from Ultra Hell, but that's not necessarily the end of the fight.
yeah.
Instead of, so yeah, it's an important mechanic. It plays a lot cleaner than it reads. Don't be scared of it. I still struggle with the exact like math calculation because I'm an art person, but usually the other person's pretty good at it. And if not, the quick reference sheet is right there. We use dice for counters. Yes, all right, this is how much combat resolution I've generated in an easy
Yeah.
visual thing on the table. It works quite well.
And that's honestly, it didn't take me too long to start figuring out some of the intricacies of movement. I'm still learning, but I mean that's also again, it's okay if you get it a little bit wrong. You'll every game you're going to learn more, you're going to remember more. And I think like even some of the things like initiative order is something like 40k hasn't had in 3 editions now, and Age of Sigmar never had.
No,
So, that's another thing to kind of get used to, but it's not as scary as you might think it is. And it does, it creates more interesting, like, play, in a game that's built around melee combat effectively.
yeah,
Initiative allows you to kind of do some, like, fun things and not necessarily, like, it just means, like, Big Stompy Thing doesn't necessarily always win because Big Stompy Thing might be slower or you can negate their speed and you can swing back at them and
yeah. Well, that makes for more interesting stat lines too. Like,
yeah,
and in Age of Sigmar, it's like, okay, one guy carrying a spear, it's 4s, no round, -1 or 1 damage. And
yeah.
like that, you'll see that profile or one very similar to it a lot. And
Mm,
in Old World, like just because there's a few more stats going into the calculation, like yeah, you might still be rolling 4/4, no rend, 1 damage, but the way you arrived there, comparing weapon skill and comparing strength versus toughness, and
yeah.
working out it's really fun in, and it makes it make weirdly, it makes it less gamey and more like it makes it more like makes it feel more like yes, a human is fighting a goblin instead of a 4/4 stat line is fighting another 4/4 stat line, and may the
Mm.
best dice win.
Well, it's true, yeah, because I mean, like some halberdiers that are just regular humans going into goblins, you get to be like, oh, they're actually like going into something that they're stronger than, and You know, that you get to see them kind of like be choppy in a way that Age of Sigmar wouldn't normally allow. Whereas, you know, if you're playing a Chaos Warrior who's supposed to be kind of like an elite warrior, you know, they do better into chaff than the chaff do into them because they're elite warriors and they should feel like
Right.
that, and it should be hard to hurt them, and you know, you should be a little bit afraid of them in a way that, like, when you look at their like Age of Sigmar stat line and you're just like, oh, it's 3s and 4s and it doesn't matter, whereas like,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, and
they can be somewhat intimidating to a lot of things.
going back to like the goblin versus halberdier things, like, yes, maybe the goblins are a little bit worse, but they are maybe a little bit faster. And so a couple of halberds will get dragged down, and so the fight isn't like nearly as one-sided as you might have thought at the beginning, because if a model dies, it comes from the front, it comes out of the front, the fighting rank, basically, and isn't replaced until the next combat. Like, there's no step up. So it's interesting. And then the interaction, you know, those halberdiers are to the Chaos Warriors what the goblins are to the halberdiers, and it creates yeah, we were setting out the.
It creates a degree of granularity where, like, you know, you have to be somewhat more cognizant of like what your models can do, and you know, one of the things I think we complain about sometimes in 40k, and I haven't played enough Age of Sigmar to like know if it's a complaint there, but it's in 40k there's often the like everything can hurt everything, so then nothing truly feels special. Whereas in the old world, because you have that old school, you know, weapon skill and ballistic skill and strength and toughness, and you know, that goblin can't hurt the Keeper of Secrets. It just doesn't matter what they do, they're never going to hurt them.
Right.
And thus, you know, because they are so small, and the Turbo Demon is so big, and you know, you have to play the game differently because of that, and you need to bring different tools. So there is, because you have that granularity, you then like, you have to think more about the whole toolbox. You can't just bring like a bunch of Swiss Army knives because they don't exist.
Right. It's also pretty hard, with the exception of monsters, it's also pretty hard to build a Death Star out of one unit. I mean, even if you do that,
I mean, there is technically like Monster Slayer where you can just like one shot.
I rolled a 6 and the monster's dead. And because there's so many other mechanics like line of sight and restrictions on how you can move, even if you do bring a Death Star, the way you use it on the table has a lot more finesse to it than it might in something like Sigmar or 40k, where everything sees 360 and just putting out auras of anything. I did have to look. Goblins are, in fact, kind of worse than humans, but they have a couple of special rules that make them probably put them into being better again.
That's
because the person who wrote the Empire book really doesn't love Empire.
Unfortunately, that happens. I mean, you'll get your books.
Yes.
Soon. Hopefully, it'll be a little more.
Have some juice to it.
Joyful.
Yes.
Yeah. Have some turbo cannons from Ultra Death. I don't know what the equivalent is.
I mean, yeah. All I want is strength 10 cannons that don't misfire. You can't make saves against them, and they do a 5-10 damage.
No, I would like you to not.
Is that really too much to ask? I'll pay you 500 points for it.
100%. You can pay 3,000 points for that. You can have one. It's your whole army.
Yeah, great.
And you have to hope it kills everything.
Well, of course, it has a template that's 8 inches wide, and it's just.
Yeah, I'll take that. I can work with that.
And the way you fire it is you take a bowling ball and you just roll it across the table. And anything that's still standing gets to live.
And this is why, going back to those community projects, you don't let people write their own rules.
Right. We shouldn't dunk on those too hard. I don't know anything about them. They're probably fine. A lot of people seem to love them.
You know what? It's an issue. It's like, I mean, like 3rd edition D&D is like kind of like the best example of that. Of just like they opened it up and anyone can write a source book, and you just got like the jankiest, wonkiest rules you've ever seen. Of like, hey, take this like prestige class because it'll murder everything. You're like, that's not that's not as great as you want it to be, as you think it is. Like, you know, not everyone knows how to build like a holistic game system.
Yeah. No, there's a
So
few too many 1,000-fold katanas floating around.
yeah, there's there's yeah. I mean, it's the same thing as like, you know, in like modding into video games. It's like, you know,
Yeah.
that's fun if that's what you want to do, but don't pretend that it's like the be all end all for everyone
Yeah,
else.
like playing Skyrim with a Stinger missile launcher is fun once, but
Yeah. But it would not have made game of the year. You know what I
no,
mean?
exactly.
Yeah. Well, and that, I guess that is probably one of the weirder notes we've ended it on. But Skyrim with a Stinger
Yeah.
missile. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe to Chaos Divided wherever you're listening from, and you can find us on Instagram and YouTube at Chaos Divided 40K. If you're a fan of what we're doing, you want to join our growing Wholesome Hammer community, you can find us at patreon.com/Chaos Divided 40K. Support the show, get in the Discord, join us for our paint-alongs, whatever you want to do. If you want to connect with us directly, you're at Cam.ax on Instagram.
Yeah, pretty sure that's it.
Yeah.
Come play Old World.
Yes, come play Old World. I am at Flushing Noise Marine, and send some love to at Nurgle_Snurgle on Instagram and YouTube. And until next time, bye-bye.